Good day, everyone. And right now, I will introduce our research on how online discussions are changing the way we think and communicate. Fast paced interactions on social media, especially in comment sections, have transformed human communication. In these spaces, speed often matters more than logical reasoning. Although social media was once praised for making information more accessible and democratic, its design now prioritizes emotional reactions and algorithm driven engagement rather than careful thinking. And as a result, logical fallacies such as ad hominem attacks, strawman arguments, and false dilemmas have become common in online debates. These are not just random occurrences. Platforms often allow sensational or misleading content to spread because it attracts attention and keeps the users engaged. And with social media becoming a major source of news, these flawed arguments can be mistaken for facts. And the decline in discussion quality is closely linked to a lack of analytical thinking. Research shows that people often believe misinformation, not simply because of bias, but because they do not engage in active and reflective reasoning. When we rely on quick, intuitive thinking, repeated false claims begin to feel true. This study explores how logical fallacies appear in modern social media and examines how strengthening reasoning skills can help individuals resist misinformation. And promoting logical thinking is not just an academic goal, it is essential for responsible digital citizenship.
For our background study, there are 6 points. The first point being social media platforms have transformed communication with a lot of social media platforms such as Instagram, WhatsApp, X, formerly known as Twitter, and etc. These platforms have transformed communication to a much more easier way of communicating long distance without ever using letters or any kind of sort of information. The next point will be young adults and teenagers because newly generations are much more exposed towards these types of ways to communicate rather than older generations because, well, it is much more exposed to us during our time. So that is why we are most known and most exposed towards these types of online platforms. The third point is content is much more short, fast, and emotionally driven. Because of these new social media platforms, there are many ways for us to communicate more faster, more efficient. And not only that, we have a lot of more new contents to make us more, mm, let's say, more entertained towards our daily lives.
Next, on the background of study, let's discuss about something. It is undeniable that many users online accept information based on popularity instead of evidence. And in today's digital world, social media platforms such as Instagram, TikTok, X, and Reddit have become major sources of news and information. These platforms are designed to spread content quickly through short, emotional, and engaging posts. However, this fast-paced system often promotes virality rather than accuracy. Many users judge whether the information is true based on the number of likes, shares, or comments it has. If something is popular, people assume it must be correct, but popularity does not equal the truth. Because content is short and emotionally driven, logical fallacies such as rush generalizations, emotional appeals, and hominem attacks and shaman arguments spread easily. These arguments may look convincing, but they are often weak, biased, or even completely false. Over time, users may develop the habit of evaluating arguments based on emotions and popularity instead of solid evidence. This is where our study becomes important. The purpose of the study is to help individuals identify and avoid logical fallacies in social media discourse. It focuses on developing critical thinking skills so users can analyze arguments carefully, question misleading content, and avoid being manipulated by hoax or emotional propaganda. In a digital age where algorithms create echo chambers and show us content that makes us angry or excited, logic becomes an essential life skill. By improving our critical thinking skills, we can build a more informed, respectful, and honest online community. Thank you.
So now we'll be moving on to the problem statement. So the core problem that we're facing is the decline of critical thinking in the digital age. Social media was built to connect us, but right now, its design prioritizes speed and emotion over facts. Our brains naturally use two systems, which is a fast, intuitive way of thinking and a slow, analytical one. Social media platforms are designed to keep us in that fast mode. With constant scrolling and notifications, we are being trained to react instantly rather than to stop and think. Because these apps operate on surveillance capitalism, their goal isn't to show you the truth, it's just to keep you clicking and scrolling. This is why content that makes us angry or scared spreads the fastest compared to any other content. And the worst of all, we've started mistaking popularity for validity and proof. We see thousands of likes and shares and assume a post must be true, even if it's just a clever word trick or an oversimplified meme. Essentially, the system rewards visibility and not the truth. And our ability to have a real logical debate is suffering because of it.
So the first point of the problem statement is the structural facilitation of heuristic overload. So what does this mean? It may sound like many fancy words, but like we actually experience this in our day-to-day lives. Like when you scroll through your Instagram Reels or your TikTok For You page, you might get this feeling of being overwhelmed by information. So the structural facilitation of heuristic overload means that social media is designed to overwhelm our brain. So it's harder for us to think clearly while scrolling through social media. So research by Pennycook and Rand suggests that we encounter misinformation and fallacies online because we are lazy to think. And the design of social media prioritize speed over accuracy, and it does not help with this problem at all. So since our brain is already overwhelmed, we take shortcuts and stop asking like, is this argument logical or not? So we base our judgment on intuition, which is not good for the information if it's like an important information like political issues or maybe social issues. So this is also where the ad hominem fallacy appears. We attack the person who comments or maybe uploaded the post rather than discussing the point. So the arguments we see online, maybe in the comment section, is actually like shifting from finding out the truth to insulting people online. So what is the evaluation? Since our brain is already overloaded by the design of social media feed, this changed how we communicate online, especially. Being logical and analyzing is slow, so we use shortcut and we get rewarded by shares and views. We created a world where when we win an argument, uh, it's not about being right or being logical, but it's about protecting our image. Next, the second point.
Another main problem that I want to talk about is algorithmic reinforcement of the strawman. So there's a research by William J. Brady and his colleagues in 2017 found that moral and emotional language is the most strongest predictor of content being shared on social networks. In other words, posts that trigger anger or moral outrage travel farther than calm, nuanced arguments. So that means emotionally charged misrepresentations are structurally rewarded by the algorithm. The psychological impact is significant when people are constantly exposed to distorted versions of opposing viewpoints. They begin to lose what philosophers call logical charity. So the habit of interpreting others' arguments in their strongest form. Instead of asking what someone truly means, users respond to a caricature already framed as extreme or unreasonable. So, further research by Side and Errol in 2018 shows that misinformation spreads faster and more broadly than accurate information, partly because it is more novel and emotionally provocative. As a result, social media doesn't just host fallacies, it rewards them. Okay, so over time, this dynamic fuels effective polarization, increasing distrust and hostility between political groups, and reshaping how we perceive the other side.
Alright, next we move to the quantification of social approval. In today's digital environment, likes, shares, and reposts act as credibility shortcuts. Instead of carefully evaluating information, people often assume that high engagement means high accuracy. Popularity begins to replace coherence and evidence as the standard of truth. When a post goes viral, it feels trustworthy, even if the argument lacks of strong logic or reliable sources. Repetition also plays a major role. The more we see same idea repeated across the platform, the more accurate it appears to us, even when it isn't. And at the end, as the result, performative communication, meaning content designed to attract reaction and engagement, is prioritized over logical strength. People focus more on what will gain attention rather than what is well reasoned. In the evaluation, because of this shift, argument quality is increasingly measured by engagement metrics instead of critical thinking. Emotional intensity is often rewarded more than rational debate, which can weaken the meaningful public discussion.
Okay, so the fourth one is cognitive fragmentation and the decline of sustained reasoning. In today's digital landscape, our brains are being rewired by our habits. So the first thing first, the constant loop of rapid scrolling and short-form content is actively reducing our collective attention span. So second, we've become habitual task switchers. While it feels productive, this constant jumping actually weakens our capacity for deep comprehension. Finally, When we consume information in this tiny fragmented burst, it prevents us from engaging in systematic reasoning. We stop looking at the big picture because we are too focused on the individual pieces, And instead of doing the hard work of critical evaluation, users are increasingly relying on the cognitive fluency element. In other words, if a piece of information is easy to process or feels right, we tend to accept it as true without actually questioning the logic behind it. To put this into perspective, digital fragmentation isn't just a distraction, it's reshaping our epistemic habits. This makes us significantly more vulnerable to arguments that are persuasive and emotionally charged but ultimately logically flawed.
Okay, so now I'll be talking about the analysis part. In the digital age, social media has changed how we think. The human mind uses both analytical and intuitive thinking. Analytical thinking is slow and evidence-based, while intuitive thinking is fast and automatic. On social media, people react quickly by liking, sharing, and commenting. This doesn't mean they are irrational, but the fast-paced environment encourages quick judgment instead of careful reasoning. As a result, emotionally appealing content is often accepted without deeper evaluation. At the same time, social media platforms reward content that creates strong emotional reactions, such as outrage or fear. Posts with more likes and shares appear more credible, even if they lack evidence. Logical fallacies like ad hominem attacks or strongman arguments become effective because they are simple and emotionally satisfying. Over time, public discussions shift from seeking truth to seeking visibility. The real problem is not just individuals failing to think critically, but a digital system that make careful reasoning harder to practice.
Social media arguments today often feel emotional rather than logical. This is not caused by only one issue. It happened because of the interaction between human thinking and social media algorithms. In the book Thinking Fast and Slow by psychologist Daniel Kahneman explains that humans often use system 1 thinking. This is a fast, automatic, and emotional thinking. It helps us make quick decisions, but it is more likely to make mistakes. When we scroll through social media quickly, we rely on this fast thinking instead of slow analytical reasoning. This is why misleading information can spread easily. Emotional content is shared before people take time to check evidence. At the same time, algorithms promote posts that get strong reactions. Exaggerated or emotional arguments become more visible than balanced discussion. For example, complex climate policies are sometimes simplified into extreme claims like destroying the economy. This is an example of the strawman fallacy. In addition, likes and shares make people associate popularity with truth. Viral posts may feel credible just because many people engage with them. Overall, the decline of logical reasoning online is not only an individual problem, it is also influenced by how digital platforms are designed. And that is why improving critical thinking and slowing down before reacting is important for better digital discussions.
The last part of our discussion is how social media affects our logical thinking. So people tend to give reactions, emotional reactions, such as likes, shares, and comments on a post or a content very quickly without even thinking about that content carefully. And social media users also tend to think that when a post has more likes, more shares, and more comments, that means they're accurate and it's based on facts without making sure that it is the actual truth. And short form formats and constant scrolling hinder the analysis of complex arguments, means that a short form content was simplified in social media, making it harder to analyze an idea properly.
So in conclusion, social media and the way our brain works makes logical mistake very common. As a human myself, we like to think fast and use shortcuts instead of think deeply. On social media, also, everything moves very so quickly, so we often react without carefully checking facts. Also, social media algorithm shows us content that gets strong emotion like anger or excitement. Because it gets more likes and share, emotional and exaggerated posts spread faster than calm and balanced one. Lastly, many people think that if something has a lot of likes and share, it must be true. But actually, popularity does not always mean the truth. That is why critical thinking is very important in digital age. Thank you.